There's something uniquely disorienting about growing up in the 1990 seconds. Not because it was better or worse than other decades, but because it was transitional in a way no generation before or after experienced. You didn't grow up offline, and you didn't grow up fully online either. You grew up while the rules were changing. As a child, your world was still physical. You played outside. You got bored. You disappeared for hours without explanation. Your early nervous system learned independence, imagination, and unstructured time. But unlike previous generations, that environment didn't stay stable. As you entered adolescence, the digital world arrived quietly, then all at once. Phones, internet, social media, constant comparison, permanent visibility. Your brain wasn't shaped entirely by one environment. It was stretched across two. Psychologically, this matters more than most people realize. Early childhood teaches the nervous system what normal feels like. Late adolescence teaches it how to survive socially. For people born in the 1990 seconds, those lessons often contradicted each other. You learned early that solitude was safe. Then later, you were taught that being unseen was dangerous. You learned that mistakes faded with time. Then suddenly, everything became permanent. You learned how to exist without an audience. Then you were handed one. This creates a specific kind of internal tension. Part of you craves depth, privacy, and quiet competence. Another part feels pressure to perform, explain, brand, and stay visible. You weren't raised to seek attention, but you were later required to manage it. That's why many people from the 1990 seconds generation feel chronically conflicted. Not anxious in the obvious sense, but internally divided. You know how to be alone, but you don't fully trust disconnection. You value authenticity, but you're constantly aware of how things look. You want meaning, but you're surrounded by metrics. Psychologically, this produces a state of low-grade cognitive strain. Your nervous system learned regulation in a slower world, then had to adapt to one that never stopped signaling. Notifications didn't shape your childhood, but they shaped your adult attention. That's why silence can feel comforting and unsettling at the same time. Another defining feature of the 1990 seconds generation is expectation whiplash. You were raised with optimism. You were told that education guaranteed stability, that effort would be rewarded, that progress was linear. Then adulthood arrived during economic instability, social fragmentation, and constant comparison. The problem wasn't just disappointment, it was disorientation. Your internal map didn't match the terrain. Psychologically, this often shows up as delayed identity consolidation. People born in the 1990 seconds tend to take longer to feel settled into adulthood. Not because they're immature, but because the criteria kept changing. What does success look like? When stability is rare, careers are non-linear, and identity is constantly renegotiated online, your generation learned adaptability early. But adaptability comes at a cost. When environments change too often, the nervous system stays alert. Flexible, yes, but rarely at rest. That's why burnout is so common among people your age. Not because you can't cope, but because you've been coping continuously. There's also a subtle grief many people don't talk about. You remember a time before constant performance, before everything had to be documented, optimized, or shared. You didn't lose that world dramatically. You watched it dissolve slowly, and your body remembers both versions. This is why people born in the 1990 seconds often feel like translators. Between older generations who don't fully understand digital saturation and younger ones who never experienced life without it. You can see both sides, and that perspective is heavy, but it's also a strength. Your nervous system knows how to slow down. Even if it's surrounded by speed, you know how to create meaning internally, even while navigating external pressure. You understand that identity isn't just expression, it's integration. The task for your generation isn't to choose between worlds, it's to consciously regulate between them, to reclaim depth without disappearing, to use technology without letting it use your attention, to allow rest without guilt. You aren't behind. You aren't broken. You're carrying two developmental timelines in one body and learning how to let them coexist.